Well, thanks. I now reconvene the regular council meeting for Monday, March 11th, 2024. Welcome to members of the gallery tonight. We have a fairly full gallery tonight. And before we get underway, we'd like to acknowledge that this council meeting is being held on the homeland of the Tanaka people. Could I get a motion to adopt the agenda for the regular council meeting Monday, March 11th, 2024? Councillor Popoff, Councillor Ray. All in favor? Opposed? That's carried unanimously. Thank you. Can I get a motion to adopt the minutes of the regular council meeting of Monday, February 26, 2024? Councillor Ray, Councillor Blissett. All in favor? Opposed? That's carried unanimously. We'll move on to delegations. Tonight we have one delegation. Harvey Lee of BDO Canada is here to provide the audit planning report for the city. So welcome back, Harley. Has it been a year already?
Thanks, Wayne.
Yeah, the floor is yours.
So yeah, we're the appointed auditor for the city of Cranbrook. So I'm part of that audit team. And so at the beginning of the audit, we're always required to provide correspondence with those charged with governance, being mayor and council, to give basically an opportunity to make sure as auditors that we're aware of anything that we need to be made aware of. If you're aware of risks or anything within the organization that us as auditors need to be made aware of. And regardless, there's always correspondence, kind of highlighting a lot of that, what our audit approach is, that type of thing. And so probably won't go, I won't go through this in detail, but just kind of highlight some of the major things. And so I'll just kind of quickly go through some of the highlights. And so within our firm, we have an audit team that is fairly expertise in public sector auditing. And so for myself, even I'm removing myself somewhat as being more of a relationship type person to the city, and then the auditors. So the engagement partner, Mario Perotti, all he does is audit. And so he's got a lot of expertise in that area, and Kayla Northcott. And so, and they're all within the BC interior. They're not physically here in Cranbrook. And then Emily Newell, the engagement audit lead, she is in our local office here. So the timeline, we're getting into it. We've done some testing already, and that's all been successful. And so come May is when the finalization of the report happens, and everything gets submitted to the province and approved by yourselves. So our responsibility is to give an opinion on the financial statements, and it's management's responsibility to prepare those financial statements. When it comes to fraud, we do look for fraud within the organization. We look at internal controls. Fraud is harder to detect than an error happening, because there could be collusion and other things. Nonetheless, we design procedures around detecting fraud if that was the case. And at the same time, if there was any suspected fraud within your organization, you would be obligated to make us aware of that as well. So it's a risk-based audit approach. And so we look at what are the risky areas of the audit. So fraud risk, which we've kind of highlighted, It is an area that we look for. Management override of controls. Does management have the ability to override controls? And then when it comes to funding, different types of funding, there's different criteria that are required, whether stipulations and that type of thing. And so the timing of grant funding, say how that gets recognized. And then new this year is asset retirement obligations. And so it's a new financial standard, and there will be disclosure within the financial statements on what these asset retirement obligations are. And Mario will actually spend time doing a presentation as well as the audit moves along to kind of highlight how that's going to look before everything gets finalized. So materiality, when you look at an organization such as yours, and you have 250 million worth of capital assets at their original historical cost and amortized, 2% of that number would be like $5 million, and so that would be material to a user, and those assets get amortized over their useful life. And then more on your statement of operations side, $2 million would be 3% of your revenues. And then this slide just is a quick overview of the approach to the audit and assessing risk and inherent risk, control risk, internal controls, and then using our technology. And there's a lot happening these days on standards of quality management. And so within our firm as well, we've had to implement all kinds of ways that we document that there's adequate training and performance on quality management. And a lot of that's coming out of some of the big things that have happened in the UK when it comes to big public companies and auditing firms and how things have been reported. And so these standards are becoming internationally worldwide. And then a lot of our approach is digitally based, and so a lot of data analytics, but at the same time looking at actual documents as well, substantive approach. A lot of the technology today, we use a secure portal for exchanging information, and Charlene and her team are good at providing all that documentation as everything becomes digital. And then there's just a bunch of resources that you can drill into if you're interested in reading more about all of these topics. ESG is a big thing these days. And then the appendices, which is our engagement letter, us confirming that we're independent and able to give an objective opinion, and public sector accounting board updates on all the standards that are changing. So that's my presentation. Any questions?
Council, questions, comments? Councilor Peabody.
I think just thank you. We've had you present to us many times before, and it's always a pleasure to have you.
Thank you.
Further? Thank you very much, Harley, and we'll see you later in the year for the wrap up. Much appreciated. Moving on to bylaws. First bylaw for consideration tonight is the Airport Parking and Business Control Amendment Bylaw number 4138, 2024. This bylaw is back at council for adoption. Can I get a motion that council adopt the Airport Parking and Business Control Bylaw number 4138, 2024, please? Councillor Ray, Councillor Stetsky, discussion. All in favor? Opposed? That's carried unanimously. Thank you. Next bylaws for consideration tonight are the official community plan amendment bylaw number 4139/2024 and zoning amendment bylaw number 4140/2024. The OCP amendment is back for the second reading and the public hearing referral, while the zoning amendment bylaw is before council for first and second readings, as well as public hearing referral. These bylaws relate to 2400 30th Avenue North. Can I please have Engineering Development Service provide a brief overview of the report, please?
Evening, Mayor Price, Council. A little bit of background on the development. This is a zoning amendment, so we're looking to go from low density to high density in the area between Panorama Road and 30th Avenue. The dwelling units that would be counted in this would be 331 dwelling units. Within the interest of the city, I would say towards our housing strategy that we are trying to meet approximately 1,500 new dwelling units by the year 2030. So staff is considering this as a favorable bylaw that we're looking at. So the zoning bylaw and the OCP are in for the zoning bylaw, as you mentioned, is in for first reading, and the OCP is in for second, as well as referring to the Advisory Planning Commission and to recommendation to submit for public hearing. There have been a number of comments that have been received, and they are attached in the application form from the public. As we sent out after the first reading on February 26th, we sent out public consultation and notice to landowners within proximity to the site under question. That's about all that's happening. Since it's just the zoning, there isn't too much information that we can go into without getting bogged down in the details of development permit and other concerns.
Thank you, Connor. Can I get a motion that council gives second reading to City of Cranbrook Official Community Plan Amendment Bylaw number 4139/2024, refer the bylaw to the Advisory Planning Commission for recommendation, and submit to a public hearing to be scheduled for 6:00 p.m. on March 25th, 2024. Mover, please. Councillor Bissett, Councillor Stetsky. Discussion. Nope. Councillor Stetsky.
Yeah, thank you. I've read the submissions that have been made to date. A number of them were concerning whether or not views would disappear with potential construction. And I was very pleased to see the report from the consultant showing basically viewscapes and what would be impacted and what wouldn't be impacted by the building of the apartment should it proceed. Did read through the comments, and there will be a public hearing scheduled for March 25th at 6 p.m. and would certainly invite those that have submitted letters to participate in that public hearing. Sometimes we have a public hearing and nobody has anything to say, but I gather from the letters that there will be quite a bit to say at the public hearing coming up on the 25th, and we certainly welcome feedback from the public.
Councillor Papa.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. So our recent housing needs study identified in the next 7 years, we need to build 1,415 more units for meet current demand and that future demand. So we definitely need more medium and high density housing. Rob, my question to you is, we're right at the final hour of finalizing our official community plan. Does this property, the way the official community plan is currently drafted, is this property within the high density development for the draft OCP?
Through the mayor to Councillor Popoff. So the areas in the current draft that we identified for the medium and high density are the ones that we discussed at the council table through committee of the whole. So along Victoria Corridor, close to where the arenas are, there was some pre-existing high density. While this specific property wasn't necessarily pre-designated, because we typically don't pre-designate a lot of land. It has been as part of the discussion with respect to land use. And as far as from the planning perspective, as noted in the report that Connor prepared and we looked at is, while it's not directly in the corridor, it is in a pretty reasonable location to add density. I mean, it's within extremely close proximity to a bus stop on one of the major bus routes, number one. As the crow flies, it's about a kilometer, just a hair over a kilometer walk to the major shopping centers, both Walmart, Superstore, the mall. So, and it is in the vicinity, Kootenai Street is a higher density neighborhood. I mean, that's where I live, so along 12th Street North is all multifamily. So, it is an extension of that. And now that's sort of probably the furthest extent for that, because after that, we don't have, infrastructure anymore for transit and things. So from a planning perspective, certainly we see it as an area that could have that potential because of the proximity of all the things that we look at when we're looking at, the idea of a complete communities or more sustainable development with access, walkability, those kinds of things. So.
Excellent. Thank you,
yeah.
Phil. And Mr. Mayor, I learned earlier tonight that in the last 10 years, our council has approved upzoning of medium and high density, probably to 1,000 units already. And the vast majority of those pieces of land are still sitting vacant. I appreciate the urgency of getting another 331 units on the books for high density, but we all know that there's nothing the city can do to require developers to start developing. So, and also the fact that it's, I think, on the fringe of where we want our corridor and downtown high density. I'm looking forward to the public hearing. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for that. And just on that note as well, thanks for that explanation, Rob. I think we have to realize too that when we started the revision of our OCP, the regulations that are coming down from the province right now with respect to quotas and targets and whatnot, and that we had to redo our, all of our plans. This wasn't on the table at that time. So certainly looking at what has come down from the province, I would think before our final draft is completed, the OCP, this is a no-brainer that this area would come in for high density. And you can see other areas in the community that we would be considering high density as well before we're finalized. Yes, Rob.
Sorry, if I may, I will note that the property is currently zoned R4, which is the low density multifamily, if I'm not mistaken. So it did have that idea of some level of density. This is sort of an up densification of it. So I know anecdotally, even before my time, the site was being looked at for kind of townhome type development. And that was sort of the first iteration of the discussions we've had with this proponent. But clearly with respect to the housing needs, et cetera, they're looking at trying to provide more density. So it might be a low density land use designation, but it was zoned or is zoned R4, which would accommodate for townhomes. But it is a lower density townhome development versus what they're proposing.
Thanks, Rob. Councillor Peabody.
Thank you, Mayor. I live in this general neighborhood as well. And one thing I do notice is that 30th Avenue is one of the rougher sort of major corridors in the area. Adding another 600 so residents that are going to be accessing this road. With its current condition, will it be suitable for that amount of traffic, or is it on the general timeline for being repaired?
Councillor Peabody through the mayor. The condition of 30th Avenue North has been noted for a few years now that it is in need. There's also some major infrastructure upgrades that would need to occur associated with some of these developments. So one of the reasons why we haven't gone forward with a resurfacing project is the concerns around the infrastructure upgrades that would need to happen and to dig up the new roads. So as some of these potential developments have been in the queue for a few years, that's sort of why we've been holding off. The intention would be that if some of these projects do move forward, then that would provide us with more certainty to the infrastructure that would go on the ground under the road and would give us a lot of onus to, bring those road surface upgrades forward in the queue to meet the needs of the increased development and density in the area.
Okay, and supplemental, if I may, these infrastructure upgrades that you're talking about, do they need to be completed before a development like this can go through in this area, or is it two different sets of pipes.
Councillor Peabody, through the mayor, we're still working with the development team on that as far as the impacts on our infrastructure. And we just recently completed some updated infrastructure analysis and modeling in the area. So that's just some information that's come in the last few days. So that's still to be determined as to whether and what the extent and the magnitude of those offsite upgrades would need to be.
Councillor Stetsky.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. One of the questions that comes up about development in general in Cranbrook is the availability of water going forward. And of course, the watering restrictions that were brought in last summer. So I'd be interested to hear from city staff in terms of your view on capacity to provide water adequately to another, 300, 600, whatever people in the city of Cranbrook in general. So it's more a general question, but of course, this development would pull down on water as well.
Councillor Stetsky, through the mayor, we did do some recent review of this, and I know there's some publication that we've tried to do recently to talk about the types of growth that we are looking at. The major impact on our water restrictions and drought is outdoor water use, and the primary contributor to those outdoor water use, in addition to recreation fields and green spaces, is single family residential lots that do have larger footprints for grass and irrigation. So this type of development that is more dense is the household use isn't going to be any different than a regular household use, but the outdoor watering use and that peak summer use is going to be a lot less, especially per household or per capita, than it would be in what we see in a more conventional single family or smaller density. So we would be quite supportive from that perspective of seeing higher density use when it comes to being able to onboard more housing.
If I could
Councillor
just
Stetsky.
speak to that for a
Oh, you
second as
betcha,
well.
Connor, go ahead.
Speaking with our engineer today, there's a number of different options for connections around. There's not just one option. So the concerns around just one development, one of the neighboring properties being affected by lack of pressure or anything like that. There's a number of different options for connections for water and sewer as well around the area.
Thank you, Connor. Councillor Stetsky.
Yeah, so it is a broader question though, just about the carrying capacity, let's call it, of water in general for the city of Cranbrook. And I know some communities have sort of looked at what they thought ultimately the population could be and that would be supported by and have enough water to serve everyone. Do we have that kind of information here in Cranbrook so that there's a comfort level amongst citizens around expanding our population and having adequate water?
Councillor Stetsky, through the mayor, our latest analysis has shown that, from a supply perspective, when we look at our water licenses and availability through surface water and groundwater, that we would have the ability to have up to 50,000 residents. So as far as the supply at the source, we do have certainly adequate. There are upgrades that do need to occur, and that is available in our water quality and supply master plan that would show there would need to be upgrades between the source, between the reservoirs and the city of Cranbrook, and also including the upgrades to a new Gold Creek Dam. But as far as overall water supply availability, we don't need to go searching for new sources. We just need to make sure that we're protecting those sources and that we invest in the infrastructure to upsize the transmission lines from those sources to our distribution system.
Thank you. Further? Call the question. All in favor? Opposed? That's carried unanimously. Thank you. Could I get a motion that council give first reading to the City of Cranbrook zoning amendment bylaw number 4140 2024? Mover, please. Councillor Stetsky, Councillor Peabody. Discussion? All in favor? Opposed? Thank you. Can I get a motion that council give second reading to the City of Cranbrook zoning amendment bylaw number 4140 2024? Refer the bylaw to Advisory Planning Commission for recommendations, submit to a public hearing to be scheduled for 6:00 PM on March 25th, 2024. Mover, please. Councillor Ray, Councillor Popoff. Discussion. All in favor? Opposed? That's carried unanimously as well. Thank you. 6.3, next bylaws for consideration today, the official community plan amendment bylaw number 4141, 2024, and zoning amendment bylaw number 4142, 2024. The OCP amendment is back for second reading and the public hearing referral, while the zoning amendment bylaw is before council for first and second reading tonight as well, as a public hearing referral. These bylaws relate to the cabin in the woods and the St. Mary's neighborhood plan at Shadow Mountain. Can I please have Engineering Development Services provide us an overview on this report, please?
Sure. And thank you, Mayor and Council. So this is the continuation of the application or consideration of the report from the last council meeting where council gave first reading to the OCP amendment to proposing to change the neighborhood plan. I guess it called the conceptual development plan in the neighborhood plan for this parcel from urban reserve and community open space to the estate single family residential and community open space. And then the proposed zoning amendment is to change the zoning of the property from R60 rural resource, and I note in brackets it's an RDEK carryover. So that was a zoning that came with the property when the boundary expansions were done, to the comprehensive development zone 3 CD3 Shadow Mountain zone. And then also designating the property as single-family residential estate on the development concept plan in the CD3 zone map. And these amendments would facilitate the subdivision of the property into the proposed 12 lots with the 1 lot community open space for the community. Yeah.
Thanks, Rob. Can I get a motion? The council gives second reading to City of Cranbrook Official Community Plan Amendment Bylaw number 4141, 2024, and authorize staff to refer to the Advisory Planning Commission for recommendation and schedule a public hearing for the proposed amendments for 6:00 PM, March 25, 2024. Mover, please. Councillor Popoff. Councillor Peabody. Discussion. Councillor Graham.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. After going over our conversations from the last meeting and reading more about the project, I am not voting in favor of moving on it. I think we should keep it as it is in an urban zone, just with its proximity to the river. I just don't feel comfortable moving forward on it.
Thank you. Further, Councillor Stetsky.
Yes, I continue to be opposed to this motion, and it's based on 3 factors. One, I can't in good conscience say that I'm opposed to urban sprawl and then vote in favor of adding to urban sprawl. Secondly, it is in a floodplain, and we know by looking around the world that climate change and floods don't respect 100-year flood maximums, 200-year flood maximums, etc. This is being built in a floodplain. Third, of course, this is all rivers and creeks are generally major wildlife corridors. And this one is no exception. And of course, whenever wildlife and people run into conflict, wildlife lose. And I have been contacting some biologists. I did provide some information to council and to staff this afternoon. Hope to be able to provide more on that. And then I did also receive an email from Sophie Pierre, who is, of course, an elder and a former chief of Aquam. And she says, do you have access to the environmental assessment that allowed for this? I'm assuming that the city has been in touch with Aquam chief and council, as this proposal directly affects reserve lands. But as a band member, that would be effective. I have seen nothing in the way of a referral. So basically for those 4 reasons, the 4th one being new, I continue to oppose this motion.
Thank you. Further, Councillor Popoff.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. We're asking for a second reading, hearing, and then going to the public hearing process. So before I go there, Rob, what's the current way it's in an urban reserve? What could the owner build on that property right now.
Under the neighborhood plan, the urban reserve designation kind of specifies, I quote the policy provision is that it's certain lands were not planned for specific land use or development at the time. And recognition of that, the lands were designated urban reserve until a separate OCP amendment is approved. So under the neighborhood plan, it does have that designation with the park space, but it is zoned RR60, which is that rural resource zone that in theory, I suppose the applicant could undertake any of the uses that were permissible under that zone. It's a more of a large holding zone of the regional district, farming, those kinds of uses. But essentially under the neighborhood plan, it would just stay the same essentially. Tis the RR60. I'm just going by recollection here back from my RDK days, but I believe the RR60 zone was a 60 hectare minimum parcel size requirement. So 120 acres plus or minus. So it kind of would be status quo for the time being until an OCP amendment is made.
So just a few supplements. Thanks, Rob. So it has been our practice, whether we call it urban sprawl or not, that the St. Mary's neighborhood urban plan continues to be developed. And this is what happens. We have these urban reserves that then later, when it comes time for the owner to want to develop, they bring it forward, and we're doing what we're doing today. And we have in the past agreed to taking urban reserve and moving it into sometimes medium density, sometimes single family, but medium density as well. So I think this is the process that the current owner of the property is wanting to hear back from council on. So I think it's worthwhile taking it through to third reading and the public hearing. Also, for another reason, Mr. Mayor, around the table here and in our staff, we're not environmental, wildlife, floodplain experts. And we can, during this process, we take it to third, seek out that information from the scientific experts on just what the common open space might mean negatively or positively, but we're not the experts. I don't think we should prejudge what that really means if the common open space was to continue with these few units on it. So I'm okay to take it through second reading, putting it to the public hearing, getting the experts, if that's the critical mass of concerns, and then hear what the experts have to say, and then deal with it at third reading.
Thank you very much. Councillor Bissett, then Councillor Peabody.
Thank you, Your Worship. So further to what Councillor Stetsky brought up in the email from Sophie Pierre, has there been consultation with ACOM?
So with respect to this specific land use amendment, the application wasn't specifically referred to ACOM. It hasn't been past practice that we would refer one-off changes to them. But we also don't have a strong formal policy on referral of OCP amendments. The Local Government Act specifies that essentially a council must consider who to consult with and in what form. And it lists a number of different groups that we would do, being the school board or the First Nations, and a couple others that are on that list. And so, yeah, the property in question that's actually considered the ACOM lands, they're outside of the 30-meter notification zone, which we use as the notification zone for bylaw amendments. So that's really what we go by. And of course, in hindsight, and certainly something that we are looking for at a staff level is through a development procedures and delegation bylaw, with upcoming changes to the legislation regarding public hearings, we're also going to look at trying to formalize the referral process for these types of applications, because we just don't have that clarity. And so as you might notice in some of the reports, we do try to indicate which organizations and application would be referred to. For example, the 30th Avenue one, we indicated that it'll be going to the school district. And that's because from the staff perspective, to indicate to council, high density has implications from a school planning perspective. So we do that. But I can say that I did have a phone call from KNC today as well, their referral department. And so I did forward them the notice of the application, as well as the link to the staff report here. So they had the information at least that they could see. Yeah. And it was my understanding that they would be looking at trying to provide some form of comment. So I did suggest that hopefully they could do it by the 25th.
Sure.
If council wishes, we could certainly, amend the resolution to, if you proceed as is, to just include the formal referral to KNC. So it's acknowledged that council would like to refer it to them. In that formal process, there's a couple different things we could do, but so they are aware, they have been sent the information as of today.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because I do think this is a different type of development than what we do in the city. We're beside a major river. And so we have to look at the downstream impact of that. And we don't normally do that. So we have to treat this differently than we normally do. And so certainly consulting with ACOM is important and other neighbors downstream, because whatever we do with that land has an implication for the rest of the river. And we have to consider that. And let alone with climate change. And yes, I mean, there is some expertise on this council as far as riparian zones go. And yes, they're important. And we know that. So we don't need an outside expert to tell us that. We know it already. And we need to take that into consideration when we're developing in this kind of land. But the real issue goes back to when this was brought into the city in the first place, because this is not urban land. And so we have to, because it was brought in, but we have to deal with this, and we have to deal with it differently. And we're not really prepared to do that yet. As you mentioned, 30 meters, that's irrelevant in this kind of zone. We need to look far bigger than that. So, I mean, I'm not that comfortable with this development at all. Riparian zones are extremely valuable for wildlife, and let alone with the climate change implications for flooding in this area. But we certainly have to up our game as far as any development near that river. And we don't normally operate that way. So that's something to think about as we go forward.
Councillor Peabody.
Thank you, Mayor. Yeah, similar to what Councillor Blissett was just bringing up, I think it is important to, as you mentioned, Rob, bring it up with the Ktunaxa Nation Council, but also the ACOM Chief and Council. This council has made it a priority to build our relationship with the ACOM community, and I think this is definitely a project that's worth consulting them with. So thank you.
Thank you. Before I go to Councillor Stetsky, I'll just make a comment here. I don't disagree with what anybody said up till now, but certainly from my perspective, I haven't made my mind up on this, and I wouldn't make my mind up until that part of the process is in front of me, where I can make the informed decision. So really, historically, what I've done, and I think I've been fairly consistent. I've always been in favor, just really for consideration of the democratic process, to go to first reading and go to public hearing. That way we're getting all the facts from both sides. We're not having to make a decision whether approving this tonight or not. It's just taking it into step one or step two. There's 4 steps. So, and I think sometimes if we're premature and we say to something too quickly, we may have not had all the information, and then we've seen it sometimes where we said yes to things too quickly without all the information. And that's what the process and the different phases of the process is all about. So certainly where I am, and I'm not decided, but I'm certainly to the point where I would like to see a first and second reading and go to public hearing. That following it's going to be next week, and then after the public hearing, then we've got some decisions to make. That's one more week. Looking at what's been said, and I'm just trying to balance the conversation here. And I totally understand what everybody's talking about, floodplain. We've had an engineered study done for the floodplain. So, they've committed to that. And that's an engineer's report. And that's required. Our staff has done everything expected of them through this. In respect to the environment and sensitive areas, the steep slope, the wildlife development permits, that's all has to take place before anything can happen there. And that's not going to be on us. That's going to be the province going to approve that. So, and that's a level above us, and then a level of expertise above what any member at this table is capable of making decisions on. So, I prefer we have all the information, the informed decisions, and then move on, after the public hearing. Yes, Rob, thank you.
Yeah, and if I may, depending upon which way council goes, in lieu of the comments received to ensure that, we do have sufficient time to, at least send the referral to ACM. One thing that council could consider, if you choose to go with the recommendations, is just change the scheduling of the public hearing to the first meeting in April, and then allowing sufficient time for the referral and providing a comment period. And that, I mean, it kind of, I guess, postpones the process a little bit, but in light of council's concerns, that could be an option should you want to pursue the recommendations. We could just change the date if Marnie's good with that. And Mark, I'm sort of speaking off the fly here, but as an option to ensure that there is sufficient time, acknowledging that, I did get a verbal comment today from KNC that they were interested in providing some comment, but this way council gives a direction, that we would formally refer them. We'd give them probably, it'd be close to a month from today's council meeting, so close to 30 days to provide those comments, and then they can be received in conjunction with all the other comments that are received, and then the public hearing would then proceed at that first meeting in April, which is whatever date that would be, as one option if you choose to go with the recommendation. Otherwise, the alternative is there as well.
Thank you for that, Rob. So I'll go back to CO. First, you'll hear on procedure here, if we could do that and take it to the following meeting, and that gives us full month.
So Mayor Price, we just need a friendly amendment by Councillor Popoff to amend the date for the public hearing, because he read the motion already that council voted on.
Yep. So are you good with that? And the seconder as well, or no, just the? Okay, good. Yep. Okay, if we're good with that, that's fine. And then over to Councillor Setsy.
Yeah, thank you. I just want to read from the conclusion of the Shadow Mountain East Development Flood Hazard Assessment Report. Conclusion is on page 64, despite the recommended mitigations, flood risk remains for events more extreme than the 200-year design flood or projected beyond the year 2100. Hazards other than flood hazards from the St. Mary River, such as geotechnical, fire, wildlife hazards, have not been examined as part of this assessment and may exist. Stormwater and sediment management has not been designed or assessed through this study, but may also impose hazards if not adequately addressed. Additional constraints with respect to riparian habitat, environment, or other hazards may exist that have not been addressed by this work. This is different. This is a different piece of land than other amendments that have been made. And again, I think we can save staff time and money by, in essence, voting against this today and ending it now. Still my recommendation.
Thank you. Further, Councillor Papa.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. Well, here we go again. So if with the amended motion, there's also now this time to bring in the fish, wildlife, environmental experts with the province, take a look at what the intended use is of this 12 units plus the common space. Reflect on what Councillor Stetzy just read in the entirety of the report, and I'd really like to get their expert opinion on this, because though we think we might have some expertise around the table, that sort of final conclusion I think rests with those experts. So if we're going to if we do vote for this to go to third, we have some time also to get these fish, wildlife, and environmental provincial experts to also speak to it.
Are we good? Okay. I'll call the question. All in favor? Opposed? We have, the motion is carried. We have 3 opposed. We have Councillor Graham, Councillor Bassett, and Councillor Stetsky opposed. Thank you.
Can
Good
you
discussion.
Be recorded, Mayor, please?
Pardon me?
Can you record at
It was
least?
recorded, yeah.
Okay.
Can I get a motion that council give first reading to City of Cranbrook zoning amendment bylaw number 4142, 2024? Mover, please. Councillor Popoff. Councillor Peabody, discussion. All in favor? Opposed? That is carried. We have 3 opposed. Councillor Graham, Councillor Bassett, and Councillor Stetsky for the record. Can I get a motion? The council gives second reading to the City of Cranbrook zoning amendment bylaw number 4142, 2024, and authorize staff to refer to the Advisory Planning Commission for recommendation and schedule a public hearing for the proposed amendments for 6:00 PM. That will be, what was the date? April 8th. April 8th. April 8th, 2024. Mover, please. Councillor Ray, Councillor Popoff, discussion. All in favor? Opposed? That's carried with 3 opposed, I'm sorry. Councillor Graham, Councillor Bassett, and Councillor Stetsky for the record. Thank you very much. Good discussion. The last bylaw for consideration tonight is subdivision and development service and amendment bylaw number 4143, 2024. This bylaw is before council tonight for first, second, and third reading. Can I please have engineering and development service provide a brief overview?
Thank you, Mayor and Council. Bringing forward the subdivision and development servicing amendment bylaw from council direction last council meeting. Westcore Lands had submitted a letter to staff and council requesting that look at amending the subdivision development servicing bylaw to allow the approving officer to issue a PLA from 2 years instead of 1, to also issue up to 2 extensions a year each. So I brought forward a amendment bylaw to that nature for your consideration.
Thank you, Curtis. Can I get a motion that council give first reading to subdivision and development servicing bylaw amendment number 4143, 2024? Mover, please, Councillor Stetsky. Councillor Ray. Discussion? Councillor Peabody.
Thank you, Mayor. In the previous report of the last council meeting, there was just a comment by staff that trying to put this bylaw together with the extreme workload the staff are under was going to be quite the undertaking. So I just want to thank staff for having this prepared for tonight's council meeting. Yeah, it's appreciated.
Yeah, thank you very much for that, Councillor Peabody. That was turned around in very short order. So we did encounter a situation, where we, we're faced with this, and it was an inconvenience for a developer. So thank you for making that happen, guys. Yeah. All in favor? Opposed? That's carried unanimously. Thank you. Can I get a motion? The council gives second reading to subdivision amendment servicing amendment bylaw 4143, 2024. Mover, Councillor Ray, Councillor Bassett, discussion. All in favor? Opposed? It's carried unanimously. Can I get a motion that council give third reading to subdivision and development servicing amendment bylaw number 4143, 2024? Mover, please. Councillor Popoff, Councillor Peabody, discussion. All in favor? Opposed? That's carried unanimously. Thank you. Moving on to new business. The first item of new business is from Public Works Department regarding West Lawn Cemetery Master Plan. Tony Hitu and Kirby Corbin are here tonight to provide a short presentation regarding the master plan. Tony and Kirby, the floor is yours. Welcome.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. First off, I'd like to introduce Kirby Corbin, our Public Works Manager, who will be presenting today. We also have with us Lacey Barr online, a landscape architect, and Jennifer Thibert, Business Manager with Lees and Associates, our consultants on the project, here to answer any questions. So September 2023, city staff and Lees and Associates started the research engagement with staff planning and data collection for the cemetery master plan. Today, we are bringing forward an early draft, which includes a review of the business, as well as some recommendations. As you will see, our findings of the current business model is not sustainable over the long term, and immediate changes should be considered to allow for sustainable level of service of the cemetery operations in perpetuity. So Kirby will present our early findings.
Hi, thank you. So this report will provide us with a template for over the next 25 years. West Lawn is currently serving 75% of casket burials and 20% cremations in its local health authority as outlined in this map. There are currently 5 to 12 years of sales remaining in West Lawn. Over the next 25 years, we will need 360 casket lots, 400 cremation lots, 80 columbaria niches. There are 14 acres undeveloped, which equal 7,000 graves and 250 plus years ahead of us still. As the baby boom generation will begin reaching its life expectancy, the need for cemetery services will grow. This is projected to start in 2026, in 2 years, when the oldest of the baby boomer generation reaches the age of 80. West Lawn Cemetery's prices are lower than the regional average and far below Canadian averages. Our prices currently only cover 40% of the cost for the city to deliver these services. The city has not raised its fees in the past 10 years. From 2018 to 2022, West Lawn Cemetery recorded an average net loss of $82,500 per year. The standard practice for most cemeteries is to increase fees annually by the rate of inflation, which is 2%, plus 1% to improve cost recovery of its operations over time, equaling 3% in total every year. Here are the rate comparisons between Cranbrook and the surrounding towns' prices. You can see Cranbrook, Nelson, Kimberley, Fernie, Creston, and Sparwood along the top. In Cranbrook, just as an example, an adult casket, it costs $300 for resident and $450 for non-residents. Whereas in Creston, for a resident, it costs $1,100 and $2,000 for a non-resident. So there's quite a substantial difference. With Cranbrook having lower rates, we are susceptible to people from surrounding towns buying plots in our cemetery instead and filling it up a lot quicker. Here are some proposed prices that Lees and Associates put together. And you can see it's over doubling the price that we are currently at. Sorry. Here are West Lawn Cemetery's costs to operate and a comparison to established cemeteries. Typically, a 30 to 50 acre cemetery costs between $1 to $2 million per year, and a 30 to 50 acre cemetery costs between $100,000 and $500 per year. West Lawn Cemetery's 25 acre lot or site, costs $113,500 per year. Considering the size of our cemetery, the costs are quite low. But if we look at the chart, you can see that the total revenue and the net income are not even close to covering the expenses. So going forward, there are a couple ways that we can approach this. with scenario one, we increase prices annually to offset the long-term rate of inflation, and just that. In this scenario, the cemetery's net operating loss that began in 2022 is expected to continue increasing steadily over time. In scenario two, this year, there would be a one-time increase that will align with the city's rates with the fair market value of the cemetery services in the market area, as well as increase prices annually by 3%. In this scenario, the city's net operating loss is expected to decrease steadily over time until it reaches break even in 7 years in 2030. The Perpetual Care Fund. The intent of the Perpetual Care Fund is for the interest income to offset inflation, providing it with funds to pay for a higher site maintenance cost in the future, at a time when there are no further sales revenue to support it. Currently, it will not be able to fully fund a minimum level of care when the cemetery's internment area becomes inactive. The city's care and maintenance costs currently exceed the value of the annual income currently earned by the Perpetual Care Fund. From 2018 to 2022, the cemetery care and maintenance costs were $93,000 per year. The Perpetual Care Fund's interest income averaged $7,500 per year, and that's only 8% of the cemetery's average care and maintenance costs. Although it is common practice to withdraw some or all of the Perpetual Care Fund's income annually, it is best practice to retain it to rapidly accelerate the growth. Increasingly, municipalities are moving towards retaining their investment income and not withdrawing these funds. This way, they can take advantage of the compound interest. The Perpetual Care Fund projections here are looked at over 50 years. So in scenario one, if we continue to withdraw the interest income, the Perpetual Care Fund balance would be $1,233,000, and the investment income from it would be $20,500 per year. But the current site care cost would be $214,500 per year. So the current site care costs will not be covered. In scenario two, we increase the prices more assertively and no longer withdraw its annual investment income. The Perpetual Care Fund's balance would be at $6,927,000, and the investment income would be $198,000 per year. And the current care cost would be still $214,500 per year. In this scenario, number two, the interest would cover 92% of the expected cost to maintain the site at its current level of care. However, it would likely be able to fund the cemetery's site care at an acceptable lower level of care. The lowest cost expected to be necessary to fund the care at West Lawn Cemetery in the future is $107,250 per year to support the site's minimum level of care and maintenance with investment income alone within the next 25 years. So here we are, two recommendations. Implement an expansion and infill strategy to optimize the site's capacity in 1 to 5 years. Develop a more diverse array of internment and memorialization options. Example would be a green burial. McPherson's Funeral Services act as the municipality's sales agent. Taking ownership and sale of these memorializations in-house could bring in more revenue. Increase and conserve land through the reuse and resale of unclaimed lots. Increase all cemetery rates annually by minimum of 3% per year to offset inflation. Implement a one-time increase to the following resident cemetery rates this year in 2024. Retain and compound interest income of the Perpetual Care Fund. Identify, track, analyze, and decrease cemetery operating costs where possible. The next step to this review will be the conceptual design for the cemetery growth, as well as the operations review and bylaw update. Thank you very much.
And thank you. Can I get a motion? The council received the draft West Lawn Cemetery Master Plan for information. Mover, Councillor Blissett, Councillor Stetsky. Discussion, Councillor Popoff, Councillor Ray.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. So Kirby, are you asking council at this point for options, scenario one, scenario two? You were putting those out, or do you want that discussion and recommendations
We will
tonight?
want that,
Tonight, thank you.
right? For Tony?
You want those tonight? No.
No.
Councillor Ray.
Thank you. Did you want to reply to that, Tony? Sorry, Mayor.
Yeah, so we're just submitting this report for receipt for information and feedback from council where we should go. Not.
Ms. Tony.
Thank you. I just wanted to say thank you very much. It's great to see the draft report. I think it's very important that we take a business-like approach to all aspects of our operations, including our cemetery. So yeah, I'm really pleased with the work to date. Look forward to seeing the final report and look forward to those coming motions around our next steps.
Councillor Passat.
Well, thank you, and thank you for the report. We have had a number of concerns over the years on the maintenance at the cemetery. And seeing that we're, quite a bit, we have very low costs right now as far as maintenance, but maybe we aren't doing enough. So we do need, I think there is room for improvement there. And we should be breaking even. And we should also be looking at what other towns are doing as far as the difference in cost for residents that are paying our municipal taxes versus those that aren't. And so I would like, when you bring motions to council, that should be considered at that time. But I'm very pleased to have this report and looking forward to addressing some of the concerns that have been raised over the years about the cemetery and the maintenance there. So thank you.
No, thank you. Councillor Peabody.
Thank you, Mayor. While we're making changes here, I wonder if it's possible to change the names of one of the dedicated sections in the Field of Honor. We know we have returned soldiers and we have Old Roman Catholic, but then you have Indigenous and Chinese grouped together. And I don't know if we should have the extremely poor grouped with the Chinese. I just seems a little off-putting at this day and age.
Probably room for discussion later on while you're, following up on the draft here. Yeah. Councillor Stetsky.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor, and thank you very much for the report. I certainly have heard complaints from citizens about maintenance at the graveyard. One question and then a comment. The veterans section was really, we took a walk around after getting some of the complaints just to see everything firsthand. And I understand there were some staffing concerns over the course of the summer at the graveyard, which meant that some of the maintenance wasn't quite what it could have been, but the veterans section was in really nice shape compared to much of the rest of the graveyard. So first question is, why is that? Is that looked after separately, perhaps by the Legion? Secondly, I would certainly support increasing the costs if the money stays. And so if we do increase the cost as per some of the suggestions, does all that money definitely stay and get put to work in the graveyard? So two questions.
Thank you. Thank you, Councillor Stetsky through Mayor Price. We can adjust this as we need to. If we want a higher level of service, we can adjust the fees accordingly, and so that the perpetual care fund lines up with the level of service. But definitely now is the time for that conversation. You might have noticed in the charter when you review the report, we picked a medium cost increase. The Canadian average is much higher, and there's many local cemeteries that are also much higher. So if we do want a higher level of service and designate additional staff time to the cemetery, then we would want to plan that and fund it properly.
So my question is there a direct relationship between the fees that get charged and that money definitely staying and being applied to work in the graveyard? Or is the graveyard funded out of sort of our general revenue? Because they're kind of two different scenarios, and one, keeping the money and putting it directly to work at the graveyard, I think is a great idea. And the second part of my question was why it was great to see the veterans section being looked after to a higher standard, but I was curious as to why that was.
So your mayor, through to Councillor Stetsky, just in regards to the level of funding. So we brought this report to council because there's some numbers in there that we thought you should see early at a draft stage rather than here's the final report and council falling out of your chair. So number one, in your question around the funding. So the city right now, general taxpayers are funding $80,000 of the cost of that operation every year. So some of the increases we're talking about are to bring it more in line where cemeteries in a lot of places, they do run as a utility similar to water and sewer and other things that we operate so that the money coming in takes care of the costs going out. So two parts to that story. One is the cost of that operation today. And that's where Kirby and Tony talked about if we were going to look at a higher level of service, then we might want to look at those fees in that light. And secondly is that perpetual care fund. So that's the money that's put away so that the interest in the future pays to maintain the site once it's sort of shut down or full, so to speak. So both of those, you can see the trajectories we're on are not good, like really not good. And the 80,000 a year deficit was one of the things we wanted to highlight tonight. And secondly, that because our fees are so low, we're attracting burials from all over the place into Cranbrook because we are offering a very low cost service that is subsidized by the Cranbrook taxpayer, similar to some of the other things we've talked about. So we need to bring those in line. And yes, as Councillor Brissette said, the rate schedules we're looking at, there's a resident and non-resident fee structure that we're looking at for that too as well. And you'll see all the numbers in the draft report that although they, as Kirby said, it's a jump of almost double, we're still not even really that high compared to everywhere else. We're just kind of getting close to other communities. So tonight was really about making sure you guys understood how far we are to go so that when we come back with the final and start engaging you on more of the discussions around fees and levels of service, it's not going to be a big surprise. So thank you guys. You did a great job tonight.
Thanks. I'll comment to part 2 of the Veterans Cemetery. So we do maintain it to the city maintains it to the same level. There's a lot of volunteer work that also goes into that cemetery, and they spend a lot of time in there as well.
Any further, council? All in favor? Opposed? That's carried unanimously. Thank you. Thanks, Tony and Kirby. Much appreciated. Next item, new business, is also from Public Works regarding electric kick scooter pilot program. Can I please have Public Works provide an overview on this, or if not Public Works, we'll have Planning.
Yes. Good afternoon, Mayor and Council. So in April of 2023, the city did become a pilot community in the electric kick scooter pilot program. And that program concludes on April 5th of 2024. And a new program will begin immediately. In order to continue as part of that program, a new council resolution is required. So that is why we are here tonight, to get a council resolution to continue as a pilot community with the new regulations. Those new regulations do have some changes. So this includes device requirements, rules on highway use, as well as some simplified data collection and reporting processes. And we've also looked into some other communities that do provide shared electric kick scooters within municipal transportation networks. And there's 2 different models that we've seen. So model 1 is using a permit system, such as a micromobility permit program, and that is seen in the city of Kelowna. This type of program, the city would create the parameters around how e-scooters would be used, and it would be provided on a first come, first served basis to interested parties. A system like that would require some extensive staff time to create a permit process and evaluation process. The other model would be a competitive bid process, so issuing a request for proposal and receiving information from third parties for the creation and operation of a public scooter share pilot program for the term of the new provincial program. What this would see is third parties kind of running with what they've already done in other municipalities and using their own resources and doing a lot of the administration. Cities that do this are Vernon, Coquitlam, Vancouver, Osoyoos, and Richmond. With that model, it would be less staff time and it would probably happen a lot quicker. In other communities, we've seen about 30 to 60 days from the conclusion of the RFP and the bid results in order to implement a system like that. And with the extension of the pilot project, a bylaw is not necessary to have e-scooters in the community. Part of the updates in the regulation do set specific parameters about sidewalks, crosswalks, highways less than 50 kilometers, highways greater than 50 kilometers, and how e-scooters can be used within those regions. We would have to look at some of our bylaws with respect to multi-use trails, but that would be, and any signs, but that would be pending the results of this or an RFP process.
Thanks, Caitlin. So there's two options embedded in the recommendation from staff, with the city either opting for Model 1 or Model 2. Can I please get a mover for one of the two models, after which I'll read the full motion for council's consideration. Option 2 from Councillor Graham and seconded by Councillor Popoff. Option 2 is, can I get a motion that council approve the city of Cranbrook to participate in a new electric kick scooter pilot from April 5th, 2024 to April 5th, 2028, and further that council directs staff to develop and implement a process for shared e-scooter vendors to operate in Cranbrook under Model 2, complete a competitive bid process for the creation and operation of a public e-scooter share pilot program for the term of the new pilot project. Discussion, Councillor Popoff, or sorry, Councillor Stetsky.
Just wanted to recognize and thank Councillor Graham for bringing this forward. Really good initiative.
Councillor Ray, then Councillor Blissett.
Thank you, Mayor. I just have a few questions. So I recall that Councillor Graham brought this forward as a motion. Prior to that motion coming forward, had we had requests from individuals or businesses in the community requesting an electric kick scooter program?
I'll defer that to Rob.
Sure. From going off my memory, I believe we had, I might have had 1 or 2 phone calls regarding some interested parties, but again, we weren't even anywhere near the point of having the original resolution. So I think there is some interest, and there would be interest if we went out to a competitive bid process as recommended. And in discussion with Vernon, actually, I spoke to Vernon as part of this report to gather some information, and spoke to their active transportation coordinator there, and she said the process worked very well. They did it in 2021. And it gave a little bit of comfort to staff that it would be doable without a significant amount of time. And they have, I think she said there was 2 providers, and the systems are only getting better, and they're quite popular there. They're advocating for them. They're extending the program and taking it to another level. And so we were able to garner kind of a little trove of information from them that'll help us doing our work, particularly Public Works, on getting some of these packages out, the RFPs and stuff. So I think there is some interest. I mean, result remains to be seen, but we did have 1 or 2 inquiries over the years that I can recall. Yeah.
Just a couple follow-ups. Thank you, Rob. So it sounds like there's been some interest from potential contractors. Have we had any requests from community members requesting an electric kick scooter program?
I think, I guess I can speak from an OCP perspective, our downtown revitalization plan and our active transportation plan. All those plans definitely support and look to support options for alternative modes of transportation other than the vehicle. And so I think generally speaking, we did hear that through our consultation through those processes. I imagine there will be both for and against through the process. And even, in fact, some of what Vernon has done is they actually sent us a what we heard or what we learned report, because they did some post implementation surveys even. But I think overall, looking at our OCP policies and those, it definitely supports us going in this direction.
Just thank you very much for that background information in terms of how this integrates with our work on the OCP and the active transportation plan. That's really helpful information that I think, provides the framework for this kind of request. I'm just wondering if you can talk a little bit more about the potential benefits to community members, and maybe from lessons learned from other communities. What have been the benefits when these programs are in place? What are the positives?
I think, again, to speak just with the conversation that I had with the coordinator in Vernon, is I just think there was just a general uptake. I think she quoted me a stat that they had sold the most monthly passes out of any year they've been running last summer. So I think once it got going, there was uptake. I think people just were using them, were enjoying them. There's things that the providers have learned to make it better. There's geofencing, parking, those types of things. It's certainly anecdotally, there's a lot of other communities that are doing it. I mean, this is not new. You look at the big cities are doing it. The lists that we have here are doing it. And I think, it's something that could just be, again, it's a pilot. Again, and I guess that's the beauty of this is calling it a pilot. It's a pilot at the provincial level, and it can be a pilot for Cranbrook. And if we get a good bid and we get a provider, you run the pilot and kind of see what happens. And then we will also develop our lessons learned. I think that's probably the best approach. But she was very supportive and animated of the whole concept, and it was really, I guess, encouraging at the staff level, because it's something I don't know a whole lot about. And Caitlin, we're not experts in this by any means, but certainly can see the value from a transportation perspective. Again, and supported by other work that we're doing. And I mean, given that it's a pilot, it might be worth pursuing.
Councillor Bissett and Councillor Stetsky.
Thank you. And I'm so excited about this because it can also link up with our bus system. So people in suburban Cranbrook can take the bus downtown, then hop on a scooter, because that is limiting for some people, because there can be significant distances for people to move. So I think it should also help our bus system. So I'm quite excited about the possibilities here.
Councillor Stetsky.
Yeah, thank you. I think we're partly there, but there's still some kind of curious looks on some faces. So if you've been to Lethbridge, you've seen the scooters are everywhere in Lethbridge in the summer. But can you just do a brief description of how this works, just so people know?
I can. Councillor Stetsky through the mayor. So what happens is you can have a few different parameters around the scooters themselves. So there's dockless or docked scooters. So there's specified parking areas for the scooters. What we're proposing is a dockless system with parking areas identified. So that minimizes a lot of the sporadic areas with scooters and kind of creates a lot more uniformity and provides people with better opportunity to find scooters. So this would be identified in a proposal from a proponent. And what you do is you go to the scooter that you find, typically on an app, and there are other ways that people who do not use cell phones can use scooters, and that would be dependent on the provider. And you scan it. It typically is a charge out rate to unlock the bike, so the bikes are locked. And then you pay per typically minute, or depending if you're stationary or not stationary. You can park scooters in different areas and have it held there for you. Say you wanted to go to the mall, you take the scooter to the mall, you'd hold it there so nobody could take it. So it's guaranteed to be there when you come back. And that's a specific rate. And then you would go out, your scooter would still be there, and you'd continue on your way. You can buy subscriptions in a lot of them, whether they're monthly, annually, or weekly, or even an hourly rate if you're planning to just spend the day using a scooter.
And thank you for that explanation. Anything further? Councillor Peabody.
Thank you, Mayor. Who holds the liability with the scooters?
The scooter company would be required to have liability insurance with the city named as an additional insured. So that would be typically $5 million. and it would be through their insurance there.
Okay, and so just for clarification, like if someone does injure themselves on the scooter, is there a chance that they could sue the city as well?
It would first, from my understanding, be given to the person who holds the commercial liability insurance, so it would be the provider, and it would be dependent on any proceedings through legal system that way.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Papa.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. So my son was never so thrilled with the scooter. He took advantage of the scooter in Kelowna last summer. And the highlight of his whole trip with the family was, Dad, I rode this scooter. And he's not a young man either. Well, he's going to hate me for that. And what he explained was, yeah, you have an app. You upload your app like you do an Uber. You find out where the available scooter is. You take a photo with the bicycle helmet and you on it, and then you can take it off afterwards. But that's the liability piece. If there's a GPS mapping, it'll tell you where you can and can't go. And if you get into a high traffic area, it actually slows right down. So you're at a pedestrian walking level. And then he veered off the map and it shut down on him. So Clayton, is that sort of what you're anticipating with this program?
There would be geofencing required, so within the parameter of the city boundary, as well as we can have specific geofencing for high pedestrian areas, and you can also have geofencing, say there's an event downtown and you don't want scooters speeding through downtown during Sam Steel days, you can have it so it just automatically decreases the speed as soon as they get into that geofence zone.
Excellent, thank you. And just lastly, in general though, where a bicycle can go with our bylaws would be where a scooter would be able to go.
What I would propose, depending on the results of the RFP, if that is the way we go forward tonight, is that these scooters get brought into our bylaw because they currently are not applicable in there and are with this small wheel transport, which would be the same as a bicycle, so on our multi-use pathways.
Thank you.
Thanks again. Anything further? All in favor? Opposed? That's carried unanimously. Thank you so much. Next item of new business is from the Finance Department regarding the 2024 Parcel Tax Review Panel. Can I please have Finance provide a brief overview of the report?
Thanks, Mayor and Council. So due to subdivisions or extensions of services, new folios have been added to our water and sewer frontage tax rolls. Before a parcel tax is imposed for the first time, a parcel tax roll review panel must consider any complaints respecting the parcel tax roll and must authenticate the roll in accordance with the community charter. Council must appoint at least 3 persons as the members of the parcel tax roll review panel, establish the time and place for the sitting of the panel, and provide public with notice of the time and place of the parcel tax roll.
Thanks, Charlie. Can I get a motion that council appoint Mike Peabody, Curtis Penson, Manager of Engineering, City Engineer, and Charlotte Osborne, Director of Finance, as members of the 2024 Partial Tax Roll Review Panel. And further, the council set the time and place for the sitting of the 2024 Partial Tax Roll Review Panel to be August 22nd, 2024 at 3 p.m. in the council chambers. Mover, please. Councillor Ray, Councillor Bissett, discussion. All in favor? That's carried unanimously. Thank you very much, Mike, for volunteering for that. It's much appreciated. Curtis as well. You're naturally a part of that, Curtis, are you? Yeah. So thanks, Mike. Much appreciated. Last item of new business is from the CEO's office regarding the Mount Baker RV campground for the 2024-25 season. Can I ask Mark to please give a bit of an overview of this?
Hey, thank you, Mayor Price. So I'm just going to spend a couple minutes on some background here because this area has had a lot of public interest and a lot of misinformation over the years. So in 2020, the campground operator was ceasing business and gave notice to the city that they were no longer going to operate the site. So we took a look at putting the contract back out for bid, but there was quite a bit of work that needed to be done. The sites were full service sites, water, sewer, electricity. So we got quotes back, depending on the level of repair and restoration, including the buildings. It would have been anywhere from 80,000 up to 1.3 million, depending on how much we wanted to rebuild it. However, the campground, even with the full service operation to date, was only bringing in 30,000 a year. So the business case was pretty slim at the time. So the campground, we didn't put it back out for bid, and council decided just to set it aside for that season. We then looked at that whole property, and all of what was known as Baker Park, I'll just say that whole parcel along 14th Avenue all the way up 2nd to the seniors housing or the seniors hall, was all one parcel of land, and it wasn't dedicated as a park, it was a parcel, although it was called Baker Park. So what we did is council approved the subdivision of that land in 2022. So the Baker Park proper along 14th Avenue, where the old pool was, where the skating rink was, and then severing off the bottom portion of what was the RV campground. So we took off about the bottom quarter, a third of the campground. So everything, excuse me, below the camp pads on the other side of the creek, so was taken off the RV campground part. So we took the fence out, if you recall. So that bottom portion of the RV park and all of Baker Park then was turned into one single parcel to be dedicated as a park for all time, called Baker Park. Now what was left was that upper portion, which is the RV campground, the senior center. Those were two separate parcels now. So what I'm talking about is the parcel that is the RV campground. So in 2023, if you recall that big paving project that went down 2nd Avenue and the rebuild of the roadway, there's a water main that was to be used for a looping and a fire hydrant that enters the property for the RV campground charged with water. So now we can, for $20,000, we can access that pipe with water in it inside the campground property and just basically ditch across the campground get water from that pipe over to the Sani station and the wash building only. So there wouldn't be full service anywhere, but there'd be water for the wash building to operate, and there'd be water for the Sani station to operate. So with that $20,000 spend, if council would like, because there is no current future use for the RV campground site at this point, staff could put an RFP out for operating what we'd call a no service or dry campground, if there's an operator that would be interested in doing that in the city. So they would be able to offer the campsites, but some of the sites have power, not all of them, that could be brought back to life without a lot of work, but not water and not sewer to the sites, but they would have access to a wash building and a Sani station. So that would be the operation, and the intent being a fairly short stay. So some of the concepts around this were to have people be able to come to Cranbrook, go downtown, spend some money and see Cranbrook and then leave in a very short time, rather than there used to be a history of fairly long-term stays there with all the services. So this would be, the intention would be we'd put the RFP out looking for a fairly short stay, maximum 14 days, maximum 7 days, or whatever the proposal comes in at. We don't want to lose proposals, but the intent being to turn people over. So that was the concept, with that water access fairly close by now, $20,000 versus, the 80,000 to bring it from where we had to bring it from before, plus all the other repairs. It's a fairly low cost chance to get the campground to a basic operation until there's some decision around that RV campground site in the future by council. So that's what's on the table tonight.
Thank you, Mark. There are two options, council. To either issue an RFP for an operator or leave the Mount Baker campground vacant for the time being. Can I get a motion of one of the two options? Councillor Ray.
I'd like to move option 1, please.
Option 1 from Councillor Ray. Can I get a seconder, please? Councillor Bassett. Discussion. Councillor Stutzky.
Very happy to see this proposal coming forward. Thanks, Mark, for making use of that land is important.
Councillor Graham.
Yeah, thank you. Couple questions around maintenance of the property. How are we going to get, what's our cost recovery on that money that we're spending? How do we recoup our money that we're putting into there? And is there any kind of substantial costs with the sandy dump or the wash building? Do we have to bring anything up to a certain code because it's been shut down for so long?
Mayor Price through to Councillor Graham. So the cost will be like what we anticipate, just as an estimate, to get things running again should be under the $20,000 amount. But then ongoing maintenance. So right now we do send staff in there from time to time just to keep it from looking too unkempt. The maintenance of the site would fall to the operator. Same with maintenance of the sanitation station, but in terms of bringing up to code, like that was one of the larger cost items with when we talk about some of the other services that we aren't proposing to bring back. There's simply too much cost to justify that expense without a business plan that works. So all of these are fairly minimal at this point. The one thing I do want to say to council is we've got the proposal call about 95% ready to go, written for this, but there's also a chance that we do struggle getting contractors for any kind of work in Cranbrook. So I'll have to update council if we are able to find a contractor or not to actually do the work. So in the requirements of the proposal, they are required to maintain the site, maintain site security, noise, there is quite a bit of requirement in there, but we've tried to lessen that to the minimum for an on-site operator June, July, and August, and run it the rest of the time more like you'd see in some of the more remote parks, so more like a kiosk operator and by complaint sort of thing. So trying to keep the costs as low as possible for proposals for the operator. And we've also written the proposal that if they're not able to do it for some kind of a return to the city, what would the cost of the city be? And so there's that options open in the proposal as well.
That's great.
Yeah. So there's no, like, I want to know how we're going to get our money back. Like, I'm not interested in doing this, in putting this money in if we're not able to make money on it or get and recoup our costs. And so it's not sounding like that's an option right now.
Mayor Price to Councillor Graham. So as I said, we're looking at about a $20,000 spend. We do spend, I don't think anywhere near that doing site maintenance right now. And then how much we recover annually will be up to what the proposals come back in. And I can't presuppose that. The full service operator did return 30,000 per year. This one, it depends on how many years we would offer it on a year-to-year basis, because we don't know what the future holds for that parcel of land. But to recover 20,000, depending on how many years they operate, I guess we just have to do the math once they come in. If council wants to set some parameters on recovery within X number of years or within 1 year, or we don't offer it. The other thing is I can bring back to council what the top proposal is, and council can decide if they want to go with it as well. Because this is a kind of a different thing for Cranbrook. Perhaps that's what I could do.
Councillor Pablo.
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Mayor. So I think it's a great idea. Right now, there is no short-term camping RVing in Cranbrook. The ones we do have on the perimeters are permanent stays. So this is a much needed service. The fact that it's going to be short-term, there's some tourism economic development here. Come stay downtown Cranbrook, experience the downtown vibrancy, spend your money, enjoy yourself, and then when your tanks fill up, dump them and you're off to your next location. And it will also support Trevor with his Rock the Kootenays and other major events that are happening in and around Cranbrook, because the RVers want a place to locate. And right now there is no short term. So there may be a cost recovery on this, hopefully, but I think it's a great idea.
Councillor Peabody.
Thank you, Mayor. Just thinking about this with no power to some of the lots. Some of these campers are going to be using generators to power their units. Will those just follow under normal noise bylaws?
Mayor Price through to Councillor Peabody. That's correct. So in the proposal call, there is the requirement to follow our noise bylaws. So there is power to quite a few sites. I won't say all of them. So that will help lessen that. But with anything, just picture Jim Smith or any of these other sites, basically the same kind of thing.
Councillor Stetsky.
And just to avoid getting any phone calls, Regency Park RV Resort, which is on the north end of 30th Avenue, quite close to Highway 3, do offer overnight camping as well as seasonal throughout the summer. Quite a ways from downtown for sure.
Thank you. Certainly, since we've shut the park down, I think every councillor has probably been approached by more than one resident in Cranbrook. You know what, this really needs to be reopened, and there's the demand. So, we're not experts in the campground business, but I like the idea of putting out, the request for proposal. Somebody who thinks that this is viable is going to step forward. Now, if somebody that, that it is in the business won't step forward, then we know it's not viable. So why would the city get into it if we can't get somebody that actually is familiar with, this type of a project? So I'm glad we're putting it out and putting that option out there to the public. So thank you. So I'll call the question. All in favor? Opposed? It's carried. Thank you. Thanks, Mark. Moving on to administrative updates. There are a number of them tonight. First is from Engineering Development Services. Can I ask Rob Vague to bring us up to date on the Housing Accelerator Fund?
This is unfortunately not a good news story, unfortunately for us. But on February 29th, we received confirmation from CMHC that we were not successful with our Housing Accelerator Fund application. In the email, they did indicate there were 544 applicants across Canada and only 179 were successful. Doing a little bit more reading quickly afterwards to see what was going on in BC. We did find a news source that kind of indicated there were 87 communities in BC that applied, with only 11 that actually saw the money, so 12%. So again, it's disappointing. It's not all bad news. I think, as I indicate here in the admin update, the number of the initiatives that we were looking at doing as part of the Housing Accelerator Fund, twofold. Some of them are now legislated to us by the province. So some of the initiatives that we were looking at doing with respect to infill density and densification and looking at accessory dwelling units and those types of things, that has now been accelerated by the province of BC. And so we are currently in the process of looking at preparing those amendments to bring forward to council before June 30th to look at starting to deal with infill housing and such. So, we are working on a number of initiatives, as well as, we have started the task force, the mayor's task force. That's going very well right now. I must say, I think, so that wasn't necessarily an initiative of the Housing Accelerator Fund. It's certainly a big step forward. And we're also, we also implemented the land disposition acquisition policy, which was an initiative. So we did that kind of in advance in the hopes that perhaps we would get it. So, all is not lost. It's unfortunate we didn't get the money, but I think the stats kind of speak for themselves as to what the whole program was able to offer across Canada. So, it's unfortunate, but we are still forging ahead with a lot of the things that we were proposing in our initiatives. We just won't be the beneficiary of some federal funding.
Thanks, Rob. And, before I move it on, a couple of comments. I'm extremely disappointed, that there was no consideration. If you look at the numbers, I don't believe we were even in the plans before we submitted our application. When you look at who was selected, I would suggest that staff spent hundreds of hours on this. Every community across Canada right now is shorthanded in engineering and planning staff. And to ask them to go and put hundreds of hours in on an application, if there was absolutely no hope of that kind of money, there was no fairness in obviously how it was dispersed. So I have a bit of an issue with that. And for those that don't know, we submitted in part 2 applications. The first one, which I believe would have changed the face of this community for the next 10 to 20 years, 10 to 15 for sure, was a pretty comprehensive application. We were advised that it was maybe a little bit too ambitious. Our staff pointed out, here's what we've done in the past. It's not too ambitious. This is doable. We need this to change the face of this city. Nope, tone it down. Our staff toned it down. Thank you, nice application, so they get the second one, okay? Something I should just point out here, you know, the city for the last few years, we have been doing everything practical to position ourselves for grant opportunities. We've been committed to that. Let's get ahead of everything. We were ahead on the housing needs assessment. They're just bringing that out. How long have we had ours done? And we just did a second one, a revision. Up-to-date OCP plan is required now. We started updating ours 3 years ago, for crying out loud, and we're way ahead of the curve. We have a task force on housing to deal with these types of things. We started a public land inventory before Victoria even called for it. We were 8 months out in front of that one before Victoria even thought of asking for that. So, you know, it really frustrates me that this corporation has been forward thinking, and more than forward thinking, forward doing, in anticipation of opportunity. We received the Civic Award for Asset Management Award in British Columbia, that we have one of the best asset management plans. That's taken over 15 years to get us where we are with that. And we don't get any consideration. You know, I think sometimes it's forgotten that it's the taxpayers' dollars across Canada they're paying for this types of funding. And part of the taxpayers, a Cranbrook taxpayer, that has contributed to that. So in part, and I'll say it, the Cranbrook taxpayer, you know, is essentially subsidizing these other communities who are successful in these grants. And I think that's really unfair. So, I mean, I'm more than disappointed on that. And to get what, 3 or 4 lines and not even an explanation on why we weren't successful. I haven't, unless we received some rationale why we weren't successful. I'm not aware of that. I saw the response we got. That was, you know, really didn't say anything, did it?
No, correct. It was sort of, it was just I guess, I wouldn't say a generic response, but it sort of just alluded to, we didn't receive it. And if we wish to speak to staff, we could, and they'd be willing to set up a meeting. But, I mean, from a staff perspective, I think we were just kind of like, I'm going to say deflated, but we have other things to do. So, I mean, really rationale or not, I mean, the decision was made. So we didn't really take them up on the offer to meet and spend some more time on it. While we appreciate the offer, it's just that we've got, as I noted, we've got so many other initiatives in the works despite this, that we're just going to forge ahead and do the best we can and continue to look for those options. And if there's other grant opportunities that we can hopefully pursue. But yeah, we didn't feel, I guess, that it would have been any benefit to staff to find out really why. I mean, again, the stats kind of speak to themselves from a staff perspective. So yeah, I mean, the option is there. If council does, you know, really want to know why, we certainly can contact them and say that, try and schedule a meeting. But we did respond and say thank you for the response, and you know, we'll continue to look for the other options, and perhaps when we're at a point where you know, we have the you know, an action plan created by the housing task force, then perhaps we can reach back out to CMHC as there are other funding opportunities, maybe project specific, that we could look at exploring. But I think as far as the Housing Accelerator Fund, that's sort of kind of close the door there, and we just are pursuing and forging ahead with everything else we need to do. So,
yeah, and thanks for that, Rob. And it is, you know, this is my perspective. You know, I'm not really speaking for all of council, but I can assure you that my position, and I know with council here, we try to maintain a position of nonpartisanship here. I am totally nonpartisan. You know, I try, as a mayor, I try to work with who's ever representing the provincial government and the federal government. That's what we're here to do. But I just, you know, this one here, you know, politics is politics, but sometimes it does get frustrating. And, you know, I think sometimes at the lower level, we don't speak out enough because to me, I think the process is unfair. Those are our tax dollars that are being spent. So that's all I'll say on that one. Councillor Stetsky.
And thank you, Mayor. Very much appreciate your words. How much were we asking for?
I believe it was in the kind of vicinity, would have been about 10 or $12 million would have been the total kind of ask based on the initiative plan that we had presented.
I believe there was $4 billion. Is that right in that fund?
Correct.
Yeah.
Yeah. Anything further? Thanks, Rob. Hi, Rand. Now Chris Mummery is Chris with it, or Curtis?
Can you guys hear me?
I got you, Curtis. Thanks. On the Capital Works program.
Awesome. Good evening, Mayor and Council. I thought this was a good time to bring a little bit of an update on our Capital Works program for this year. So the Lagoons Phase 2 project that we awarded to Copcan Civil is going quite well. They've got all of the work that wasn't completed in Phase 1 now complete. And all that's really remaining is just kind of the final site cleanup. And that'll happen once the weather gets a little bit better and it's a lot less muddy down on the site and things dry out. They're probably halfway through the Phase 2 work now. They've got a fair bit of pipe in the ground and more structures since I even wrote the admin update late last week. So they're moving along at a really good pace. They've got a lot of the major control structures in, and there's only about 100 meters of pipe left to install on the site. So that's super good news. And so there'll be just a lot of the final tie-ins and cleanup and whatnot, but that project is well underway of being complete. So we're really happy about that. Our other projects for 2024, the Highway 95A water main crossing project's out for request for proposal. That's using the same process we used to award the Lagoons Phase 2. So that is going to be closing on Friday this week. We had a mandatory site meeting a week and a bit ago, and we had a really good contractor turnout. And the contractors that all attended were quite excited about the RFP process. So that was really good to hear feedback from the contractors. 12th Avenue South from 2nd Street to 3rd Street. That project's out for RFP right now as well. We have the site meeting for contractors to attend and ask us questions tomorrow, with it closing in 2 weeks from now. So I think we'll have lots of good interest on that. The last item I kind of want to talk about is our paving program for 2024. So I'm sure council's been hearing, staff's been hearing, lots of concern with some of the states of our major roads this year. They're definitely getting hit pretty hard with the continued freeze thaw. That continued freeze thaw does really weaken the gravels and material under our roads, and with the continued traffic can cause failures as that more water gets into the ground. Then the pothole gets a little bit bigger, it becomes a puddle that further saturates the gravels, and then that continues to fail more. So despite Public Works filling those as fast as they can, that definitely creates some hardship of trying to keep them together. So what we're kind of doing is I'm working closely with Public Works operations, and we're going to keep monitoring the roads till that frost gets out. And then once that's fully out, then we'll have a better idea of the final damage, and we can try and prioritize using our asset management principles, kind of the best roads to hit with capital replacement versus what can be a major repairs from the Public Works staff. So hopefully in the next month or so, once that frost is gone, then we can really get a better assessment on that. Currently with what we're seeing, it's looking like the intersection of 6th Street Northwest and Industrial Road 1 is one of those prime candidates to get some work done, and then as well as the outer driving lanes on Victoria. And that's all I got. Any questions?
Yeah, I got a Councillor Brissette, then Councillor Stetsky.
Thank you for the report, Curtis. I would be negligent if I didn't ask that the city have a look at 4th Avenue South. It has major craters, speed bumps, holes in it. I know it's not a main road by any means, but if you could just include that in your assessments to have a look at, because it's bad. Anyways, I just thought I'd mention that.
Yeah, we'll definitely look at that, and then we'll review it against all the other streets and make sure we're making the best decision from a paving and infrastructure standpoint.
Councillor Stetsky?
Yes, thank you. My niece Sarah is, my wife Audrey have joined us in the chamber tonight. And the reason I bring up Sarah is that she's from Winnipeg. Winnipeg this year went through freeze and thaw cycles like they haven't experienced before due to climate change. And she thinks the streets of Cranbrook are in pretty good shape compared to Winnipeg. So I just thought I'd throw that in.
Right on. Further? Thanks, Curtis.
Thank you.
Next up, Paul Haywood to provide building and property updates, an update on rail cars and animal control's new provider. Lots going on.
All right, first on the list is Knights Hall, the Tudor House property, which has a sizable amount of debris on it from the demolition from Christmas. I've been speaking with developers and with the real estate agent that has listed it for sale. We are meeting with a major developer on Monday to discuss the potential sale of the property. Okay. Next is the trains at the back, the Prestige Inn. We have received the permits to put the trains are going to go onto trucks and get hauled out. We have received the permits for moving them through Alberta highways. We're still waiting on BC. Just a sec. We've secured a contract with the Playpen Dog and Grooming Kennel. This is probably the largest kennel in the city. So we've moved on from our other provider, which we all know, and this has saved the city $67,000 a year. We continue this for 5 years. It'll be over 350 grand savings. The new owners of the Kootenay Springs building. We all love and adore this building. He has taken out demolition permits, and we are presently in discussions with proposed demolition in June. The derelict building at 28th 8th Avenue across from the hair salon is now for sale, which is good news. So the building department has received permits for the 2 West Urban apartment complexes. So these are the 5-story and the 6-story buildings. We will probably be finishing those permits sometime in the next couple of weeks. And we're hearing about proposed new construction times on those as well. And I can give you further updates as that comes out. Let's talk about the homeless shelter. We have done a series of permits just so that they can continue to work, progress in the construction they're doing. We're allowing this just because they found out some issues with the roof, some other issues with the structure, and then access to water. But in terms of permits, we're pushing as many permits ahead as we can as they try to resolve problems. So yeah, things are coming along slowly but surely for the homeless shelter.
Council, comments, questions? Well, thank you very much, Paul. Certainly those derelict buildings, we've only been looking at them for, I don't know how many decades. So that's great news, and really good news on the apartments that they're going to go this year. So I know they were trying to get them, into the ground last year. So that's really optimistic. So thank you very much. What do we got next here? Oh, next we got Recreation and Culture. Trevor, to provide the update on the Viking Skate Park, liquor license and Western Financial Place and emergency evacuation planning.
Thank you, Mayor. First off, Viking Skate Park. So summer of 2022, the city hired a consultant to do a expansion upgrade survey on the existing skate park. It was recommended to do a 6,500 square foot upgrade with a value of close to $600,000. This capital ask was added to the 2023 budget with a 90-10 grant allocation. So 90% grant funded and 10% capital reserve funded. So it'd be $540,000 grant, $60,000 from the Capital Works Reserve. We have not, staff have not been able to find a grant that's a 90-10. We did do a lot of research on other communities around us, Fernie Creston, Trail, Golden, Kimberly, and Nelson, who have all done skate park expansions, et cetera, within the last 10 years or so. And the richest grant we've seen is 80%, but most are closer to that 50% mark. So be it that we're looking 90-10, it's unlikely that we'll find a grant with the parameters at this point.
Councillor Peabody.
Thank you for this report, Trevor. What do you think it would take for the community to see the skateboard park expansion turn into reality?
I guess we'd have to change our expectations on the grant funding procedure and maybe look at more from Capital Works. It also looks like it's multiple grant sources that are coming together to build these items, but most of the skate parks that we have discovered are part of bigger projects. They're not just solely skate parks. They're other infrastructure, other recreation, other tourism stuff at the same time. So I guess expanding our view of what that expansion could look like maybe at Belmont.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Stetsky.
And further to that, have you heard much demand from the citizens of Cranbrook to expand that skate park?
I don't know if we exactly have a good forum for that, but you know, the city does run skate park demos and classes and stuff in the summer, which are sold out. I don't necessarily know if we've had people saying we need a bigger, better skate park, but possibly one with more skill adaptation. It is sort of a higher level skate park, maybe something for lesser skilled skate park use.
Thank you, Mayor. So really this initiative is as a result of the consultant's report, not necessarily from a community-led, we need to build a better skate park initiative.
From my understanding, Councillor Stetsky, the initial request was a council inquiry to hire a consultant to find out what would be best for the community.
Councillor Graham has a question, then Councillor Ray.
Thank you. Just a couple points. One, correct me if I'm wrong, I do believe that there was a initiative around prior to getting the consultant, driven by the community of having people sign up. There was a bit of a petition about the skate park. I remember seeing some movement on that and things around Facebook on what led this to fruition to at least get the consultant. But I would hazard to guess that this is probably one of the busiest parks that Cranbrook has. It's well utilized throughout its operating times when it can be, and to be able to incorporate an expansion and new lines, just again reinvigorate the park. So I think there's other ways that we can look at it too. Like we have a decent concrete park. It's not saying that you can't pour a pad and have some external features brought in that aren't concrete that could meet the need for a cheaper cost. Well, we're looking at concrete expansion. I think there's a lot of different ways that you can go about this to just create some new lines and some fun in the park where it's not going to cost a lot of money while we're trying to do a major upgrade. So just a couple of thoughts.
Thank you, Councillor Ray.
Thank you, Mayor. I've had the pleasure of accompanying a young, he's not a skateboarder, he's the other thing. What's the other thing?
Next.
Scooter. He likes to scooter. So we've been to the lovely skate park in Creston as well as the one in Golden, and look forward to visiting the one in Fernie because it looks like it's going to be pretty awesome. And they've been having to, I think, keep people off it because everybody's pretty excited. And it's pretty neat that they did a portion under the roof. So it's going to extend their season a little bit, I think. Just in terms of further information, if it wasn't too much work, would it be possible to just do a chart as an informational item for a future meeting about some of these other newish developed skate parks in our region, what their funding sources were? If that wouldn't be too much work, or if you already have that information handy, just in a chart would be great. However you want to, whatever is easy for you to share that. I would just be interested to see what the different options are. I seem to recall that there were a couple big grants that went into the Fernie Skate Park. I haven't looked back at their press releases to see, so I would just be interested in that. I would like us to continue to look at options here, and yeah, if there's the users of this group of this facility tend to be youth. If there's any interested adults in the community, could maybe do some facilitation and galvanize those folks to have their voice heard, that might be helpful as well. So I hope we can continue to explore options on this.
Very good. Anything further? Thanks very much, Trevor. Lastly is corporate services. Is Tina with us? She's going to bring us up to speed or update on childcare facility. Okay. Oh, we got one more, Trevor. Well, I didn't want to dismiss you too quickly. Back to Trevor, folks. Yes.
Thank you, Mayor. Actually, I have two more for you.
Yes, you do.
Next up is the liquor license at Western Financial Place. So when we modified the arena to add a few more luxury boxes in the restaurant area, we were notified that the luxury boxes and the restaurant liquor license, which is separate from the main arena liquor license, don't match and don't play well together. So in order to operate the luxury boxes up there as a luxury box, as the rest of them on the other side of the arena, we need to modify our liquor license. And since the license in 2000, when it was initially done, and then in 2007 when it was updated for the city of Cranbrook taking over that, laws have changed. So now in a perfect world, we would have one license for that entire facility, which would be a liquor primary license. And we would have a family food endorsement for the restaurant, which would allow outside of events, it would allow minors in that facility until 9 p.m. During events, because we are a stadium, children are allowed in a liquor primary for the event. So this really doesn't change our business. It just makes things easier for staff. If somebody purchased a beverage in the suite, they couldn't take it into the restaurant. If they purchased it into the restaurant, they couldn't take it down to the bowl. It just makes it confusing for patrons and tougher for staff. This way, it's all one. Do as you need, do as you may. One thing with the liquor primary license, because we're adding numbers to our liquor primary, we're not actually adding any more numbers. We're just taking the food primary away and adding those numbers to the liquor primary. This requires public consultation. So there will be, the liquor board will be managing this for us because we are the local governing body. It is our license. They're going to just take care of it for us. So we will see stuff in the paper. We will see stuff online. There'll be signs outside the facility, just as part of the regular process. So operationally, this is just something we're taking care of, but you're going to notice it.
Everyone's good? Thanks, Trevor. On to your next one. Perfect.
And the final one is our emergency evacuation planning. So staff are just digging deeper into our emergency evacuation procedures and ensuring that everything is up to code and our ammonia evacuation plans. And we're practicing these, putting the implementations, getting all the emergency services involved and making sure that Western Financial Place is a safe, fun place for everybody to visit.
Council, was good? Thanks, Trevor. I was just trying to get early if you wanted to get earlier there, so, yeah. Okay, and lastly, corporate services, is Tina with us tonight?
Mayor Price, I'll speak to this one.
Okay,
So,
very good.
I was working with Tina on this project and she's got a class tonight. She's at school. So I said, no problem. So we've issued the RFP. We did the proposal call, if you recall, and we had a substantial amount of interest. We scored a lot of proposals on this. And so we did select the best consultant and the best proposal through that process. And the intent being, what the consultant's going to do is review the childcare provision in the city, like what's being provided, where it's being provided all across the city, and then look at kind of what the gaps might be and what's being provided, and even looking at what may come online with some of the things that are being proposed. So looking at all that, taking that information and deciding on what might be some areas of need, and then looking more specifically on where are chunks of land that then could be dealt with in terms of having some kind of facility built. And these are then, it's an architectural firm as well. So designing the building in order to have the building as a functional space, understanding how many of each age group per type of person that looks after them by the size of the rooms, the design of the building, getting all of that together, putting it all together, getting a Class D cost estimate. The land, of course, is something that's city-owned land that we'd have to be involved in that part of the process. And then moving that all forward into a huge grant application to get it in front of the province. Because as we know, right now it's 100% fundable by the province, but that window is probably going to close within the next 2 years. So we have to move quickly on this. So we are.
Councillor Stetsky.
Yeah, so I see the report is to June 2024. The grant opportunity will still be there.
They haven't announced a close date. We anticipate it's going to be available for about a 2-year window, and then it's going to be done, is what we've heard. We don't know anything exactly officially.
Councillor Bissett.
Thank you, and thank you to staff for moving ahead on this. We know our community needs more childcare, and so I'm very grateful to staff for moving ahead on this to help our citizens. So I hope it all works out in time.
Thank you, Councillor Graham.
Yeah, thank you. I'm just looking for clarity. We had an RFP go out for for space or like for an expression of interest, I guess it might have been called. And I know we had 2 applicants. Like how does that tie in here? Does it, doesn't it? Like what do we do with those people that showed interest?
So Mayor Price, through to Councillor Graham, excellent question, because we don't have the expertise to assist those folks with what they were looking for. But what we said is we're going to have this consultant on board, and this consultant has been successfully doing this work in other communities already, putting together these very same programs, putting the grant applications together, and then getting the grant money from the province. And so what we said is this resource will then be something that we'll be able to tap into for those that did submit an expression interest, where this council has said, let's work with those. So council did have a few that they did direct staff that we will work with them. We don't have that kind of a capacity in staff, but we will with this consultant.
Councillor Popov.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. And CAO just answered my question that this consultant already has a successful track record with the provincial government, following through all the hoops and hurdles. So well done.
Thank you. Thanks, Mark. Now moving on to correspondence. First piece of correspondence is from John Brewer, Assistant Commissioner, BC RCMP, dated February 23rd, 2024, regarding body-worn cameras deployment in the city of Cranbrook. Discussion received for information. Thank you. Next piece of correspondence from Councilor Tricia Maduo, UBCM President, received March 5th, 2024 regarding provincial response to 2023 resolutions received for information. Good, yep. Next piece of correspondence is a memo from Brent Felker, Manager Gas Tax Program Services, UBCM, dated March 6, 2024, regarding an update on the Canada Community Building Fund renewal. Received for information as well. Thank you. Let's get through them. The final piece of correspondence tonight is from Lindsay Pacey, Program Officer, UBCM, dated March 6, 2024, regarding 2022 Asset Management Planning Program, and we'll receive for that for information as well. Okay, thank you. That brings us to Mayor and Councilors' reports and inquiries. Let's start with Councilor Stetsky tonight.
Thank you, Mayor. I do have a number this evening. I wanted to, first of all, I attended the Tunaha Business Day at the Prestige and the Career Fair at the College of the Rockies. And I just want to thank the City of Cranbrook staff for being an important part of both of those events. It was good to see them there. Gypsy moth spraying coming up. We've received correspondence as councillors concerning the initiative, which is led by the Ministry of Forest. So I wonder if CEO Furcher, you could just clarify, might save people writing us letters in terms of what authority the city has on this particular initiative.
Certainly. So Mayor Price through to Councillor Stetsky, what the city would do is what we've done is we've, as the province has sent that information, we've agreed to promote that information on how to get in touch with the province, how to submit your concerns when the open house was held, in order to reach the residents in the community probably a lot more thoroughly than the province could. But we've tried to make sure that it was like a flow through, that we've had that information very clear. But it does seem like there is some residents that would like council to be involved. But to be clear, I did contact the province on this one, and that was some time ago. I think I put a note out about there is no decision point of council. There is no municipal authority in this program. So they will not be looking for council to approve or not approve something. It's a provincial program, and council, as with all residents, could submit concerns with the program or support, but that would be the end of it. There is no decision point of council coming to this table.
So citizens should continue to focus on Ministry of Forests.
That's correct. Yeah, direct all comments to the ministry.
Two more issues. One, some of you may recall reading in the newspaper that Mountain Eagle's security manager, Chris Nomland, did life-saving CPR on a woman that was found in the alley across from Safeway a little while ago. I was chatting with Chris about it. He brought up an issue that has been around for quite a while, actually. And he said when he got on the phone with 911, first question they had for him was, "What's your address?" And he said, "Well, I'm across from Safeway." And they said, "Sir, I need an address." And he said, "So do you want me to stop performing life-saving CPR on this woman who had died to run around somewhere and find an address?" Because they didn't know where Safeway was. This has come up before. I know in past where there may be an incident, for example, years ago, we used to do a lot of team dances. We had a concern at the Eagles Hall. And this was just after they went to a centralized 911 system. And I said, "Need an ambulance at the Eagles Hall." And they said, "What's your address?" I said, "I don't have a clue. Like, do you want me to run outside and look for a number somewhere?" So Chris's point was, he was concerned. He wondered how many people, they also ask for your birthday for some reason. But his concern was, is there anything we can do to try and bring this back to a localized knowledge of 911, which used to be the case? Of course, it went to the RCMP station. They knew where everything was in the city, so you didn't have to take time to find an address. So I don't know if there's anything as a city we can do around that to try and encourage either better knowledge of the centralized 911 system, like maybe they can go and find a GPS coordinate for Safeway or some other thing, because he thinks that people may have suffered severe consequences as a result of acquiring an address to get service.
So Mayor Price through to Councillor Stetsky, just a couple things that, that have been coming through this municipality through the RCMP on this one is, I can tell you in most communities I've worked in, where it's gone from a local service to the centralized service in a larger city somewhere far away, this is a very common concern. But I do know with the 911 upgrade that's being worked on, I mean, it's a ways out yet, but there's a lot of upgrades to that system, and I won't make promises on their behalf, but with the use of cell phones and texting and pictures, and to upgrade it from the current sort of verbal landline-based address-based system. So I think your concern is something they've definitely looked at in everything I've seen in the material for the 911 upgrade that's coming in the future.
And of course, I'd just like to recognize Chris for taking the time. He could have just, well, he drove by initially, decided to turn around. He went back and he did save this woman's life, which is a good news story in that sense. Lastly, I was approached again by an Area C resident about the seniors parking passes. And again, what I kind of like here is she said, we used to get one. Why did it stop when it stopped? And I said, well, it's probably related to a bylaw, but it wasn't one that we passed, but this council that I know of. So she's wondering why it changed. Secondly, I said, well, we do have free parking for 2 hours downtown. And she said, my husband is severely disabled. There's no way he could walk from those parking lots to his appointments. And I'm wondering whether some exception might be made for Area C residents who have disabilities to get a pass. I guess that would be a decision of council in the end if we did do that. But a couple of questions for you, CAO Furcho.
Mayor Price through to Councillor Stetsky, like with the parking one, what I can say is that we are looking at a fairly extensive review of the parking program in Cranbrook. Because our meters are, sort of outdated technology, and where do we want to go in the future with parking in Cranbrook, and what's the intent, what's the reason behind parking, what are we trying to achieve, whether it's moving people along or revenue generation. So all of that is coming once we get that through. And I don't know, Paul, if you have any updates on that, but so the consultant is hired for starting that program. So I think a lot of what these, we could spend all day on this one topic. That's all I can say. Yeah.
Councillor Popoff has a comment.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. And I had this similar conversation with an Area C resident for similar reasons. And I said, you're right. Why don't you apply to the regional district, which is you're their constituent, and see if the regional district can work out some sort of ways and means for you to get a free parking pass. That's where you're paying your taxes. So talk to your regional district representative.
Councillor Peabody.
Thank you, Mayor. I ran into Jason Andrew, who's part of Occam Council, and he had a question that I didn't have an answer to, but when we met with Occam Chief and Council, was that September? I think one of the things that we talked about doing was having 3 other meetings, or like a follow-up meeting. Just wondering if there's any plans for that follow-up meeting, if that's in the works.
Yeah, we haven't set a date yet, but we are aware of that, yes.
Okay, thank you. Then I got actually a couple questions for Trevor while you're here. Last time I was in the swimming pool, I noticed that the diving board is still down. Has that been reinstalled now, or is that in the works? So that's good. I noticed the rope swing is also missing. Has the rope swing gone for good, or is that coming back?
Councillor Peabody through the mayor. So the diving board, the new diving board is fully installed and fully operational. We had the longest lineups you could imagine for that, but the rope swing is unfortunately gone for good. We had issues both on the staffing side and on the patron side with that. So we deemed it to be a safer operation without it.
Okay. Just for note, I know my kids and I, we visited the Fernie pool, and they have a rope swing that's not monitored. Kids can just use it whenever. I don't know if that's a future possibility for the Cranbrook pool, but it was a heck of a lot of fun for them. Lastly, Corey Cameron, who's an athletic therapist in town. He was in my shop the other day, and he was asking if there's a possibility for the ice service to be available for rent earlier in the summer than what it is right now. He says that there is a market for it. At least he believes so. And instead that hockey space, the ice space just being vacant, that there might be a revenue area there that we can possibly look into. Yeah.
Thank you, Councillor Bissett.
Thank you. I had the pleasure of visiting Ms. Bohan's grade 2 class at Amy Woodlands to talk about water. And they were doing a unit on water, and those students were very well informed about the current situation with our water supply, where the water comes from, treatment, et cetera. So that was great. And I just want to say thank you to Caitlin Pocha for supplying myself with stickers for the kids, for being water ambassadors. They like that. And also a rain gauge for them. So they'll be using that in their science class. So, and that's all.
Thank you. Councillor Wright.
Thank you. On February 28th, I had the pleasure of attending the Chronic Wasting Disease Public Forum at the Heritage Inn, and that was organized by the BC chapter of Backcountry Hunters and Anglers. Thanks to Al Duffy and his team for all their work on that. Kate Nelson was the provincial biologist who was presenting an excellent presentation on chronic wasting disease, and certainly highlights the risk in our wilderness, in our area, of course, but also in urban areas where there's a dense population of deer. So chronic wasting disease in our area now has added an additional risk to dense urban deer populations. So excellent presentation. And on the 29th, I was also able to attend the Ktunaxa Nations Business Forum, which is always an excellent event. And you know you have a successful event when you have to start having conversations about maybe moving to a bigger venue. And they made special efforts this year to have exhibitors park at Confederation Park. And even still, yeah, the parking lot was actually totally packed, and it was another excellent event.
Councillor Papa.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. Trevor, I'm glad you're still here. I'm getting approached at the Bucks games, wondering, we have 2 more regular season and hopefully a long run into the playoffs. Any chance that we're going to see those rails going down the stairs during that time? No? Okay, thank you. I'll pass that on. And secondly, we're currently allowing secondary suites, but I guess right now it's not in our OCP for carriage houses, laneways, garden suites, other backyard secondary accommodations. Will those be addressed in our OCP and look at where those will be situated, et cetera, like we did with secondary suites, Mark? Okay.
Yes, so any kind of accessory dwelling unit, whether it's garden suites, above garage, basement rooms, all that is all within what we're working on.
Councillor Graham.
Nothing to report.
Okay, I got a couple things. We have some Cranbrook citizens that participated in the National Winter Special Olympic Games in Calgary 2024. And 5 of these locals took home some serious hardware. Erin Tom, she came home with the gold, silver, and a bronze. Jesse Jensen come home with the gold and bronze. Lane Benoit, 1 gold, 2 silvers. Daryl Mayer, gold, silver, and bronze. And Jessica Klassen, 1 gold and 1 bronze, all from our community. And this is a national Olympic. So, you know, congratulations to them, and, you know, to the coaches and the people. You know, we're really fortunate in this area between Cranbrook, Kimberley. You know, they work very closely with our Special Olympics, and make no mistake, our athletes are well represented, and this is almost getting to be normal. They bring this type of stuff home on that type of stage, and you know that's really unheard of. So, congratulations to the athletes, and there's a lot of sponsorship, and especially to the coaches and everybody who put the time in for them. So, congratulations to all of you. I was fortunate enough to go to the Colts game on Friday night. There was a tribute to Colin Patterson on that game. Colin Patterson was a longtime Cranbrook coach. He was a Kimberley boy growing up. Went away to, I believe it was University of Michigan or University of Michigan on a scholarship back in the day when they were really hard to come by. Colin returned right to this area and started coaching the Colts right out of college and coaching at Laurie School here. So Colin started coaching the second year of the inception of the Colts. So Colin probably coached for 12 to 15 years, different teams, and you know, I played for him for a couple of years on the first couple of years there, and I can attest to you that he was a real game changer. So one of the things he's honored, of course, they put him on the back wall there, honor him in the back wall there. And it's not just his contribution to the Colts, his contribution to hockey in Cranbrook in general, but also worldwide. Colin's known worldwide, you know, for his coaching contribution. They came up with a guide in the early 80s for coaches, because a lot of coaches coaching the younger people in hockey were just parents or something, didn't have a lot of knowledge about the game. And it was a progressional program. When they first get on the ice, little drills, and it's how to use it. So it's progressional, right, to get them through up to, I think it was a 4 or 5 year program. He worked with people right across Canada, Czechoslovakia, Sweden, and some experts in the different fields, and developed this. And that was a universal program worldwide. And that was Colin Patterson that started and developed it. So congratulations to Colin. And certainly I know, you know, all the people that have gone through his program that he has coached, and there's hundreds and hundreds of young men from Cranbrook and Kimberley that played. I mean, hundreds. I look back, and if I say if there's one success there, all of them have done pretty well in life. You know, none of them got themselves into any kind of issues. They've been good citizens. You know, but you know, Colin took a lot of young men full of whatever we were full of. You know, when you're 17, 18, and 19, right? And really, you know, he among other things, you know, there was expectations, accountability, and selflessness, you know. And, you know, I'm still in touch with a lot of those people today, and there's a lot of them that showed up on Friday night. And you can certainly see that they've taken that forward in their lives. So congratulations, Colin, and thank you for all you've done for the area. And on that, if there's nothing more from council, I'll call for adjournment. Councilor Ray, Councilor Bissett, all in favor?